As many of you know, I'm a cultural historian at heart. I see works of art as defining elements of our shared social, political, and cultural history. Today, I'm looking at the history of opera, especially in the United States, and its intersection with milestones in American history at a pivotal moment in our democracy. Let's start with 1791. The French Revolution was raging. Mozart had died in Vienna, and Lorenzo da Ponte moved to London at the recommendation of his friend Casanova. In the US, some ballad operas had been performed in Charleston, South Carolina, and even in Puritan Philadelphia. But the opera scene was most active in New Orleans, thanks to the influence of the French who still controlled it. In that important year of 1791, the first 10 amendments of the Constitution were ratified, what we know as the Bill of Rights. A few excerpts have special resonance today. Amendment number 1. Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech or the press or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Amendment 4. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. Amendment number 5. No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury. Amendment 6. In all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed. Let's fast forward to the 1860s. Good years for opera when the states were once again United States after the brutal Civil War. Between 1866 and 1869, masterpieces were added to the opera repertoire. Verdi's Don Carlos, Wagner's Tristan, and Die Meistersinger, and to be fair to the French, the Pearl Fishers. At home, New York's Academy of Music, a 4,000-seat opera house on Irving Place, opened in 1854. It was torn down in 1926, but the beautiful Academy of Music in Philadelphia, built in 1857, still serves as a home for Opera Philadelphia. New Orleans didn't skip a beat. The French Opera House opened in 1869. In the midst of this cultural awakening, the 14th Amendment was ratified in 1868. Amendment 14, Section 1. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process. Following in 1870 was the ratification of the 15th Amendment, Amendment 15. The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. By 1920, opera in the United States was taking shape. The First World War ended in 1918 and the global flu pandemic was over. The Metropolitan Opera had been established in 1883, but it was in 1920 that Cincinnati Opera was founded. Who's here from, anyone from Cincinnati Opera? There you go. In Chicago, Mary Garden was the undisputed star of the Chicago Opera Association that moved into the Insel Opera House that we know today. Championed by the Met's general manager, Giulio Gatti-Gazazza, there was a wave of new American operas at the Met, sort of between 1915 and 1925. The composers and librettists are named on the screens, but the works were Chanouis, Cyrano, Cleopatra's Knight, Marymount, Madeline, The Canterbury Pilgrims, The King's Henchmen, and not to be left out, 2 operas by Puccini, Il Trittigo and La Fanciulla del West, both of which were performed at the Met. It was in August of 1920 that the 19th Amendment was ratified. Amendment 19, the right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. I won't get into prohibition or its repeal, so we'll skip ahead to 1947. Another world war had just come to an end, but opera in the United States experienced a tremendous flourishing. It began before the war in 1932 with the establishment of Central City Opera, and then Pittsburgh Opera in 1938. 10 companies were founded in the 1940s. They're listed on the screen. Florida Grand Opera, New Orleans Opera, New York City Opera, Opera Mississippi, Mobile Opera, Fort Worth Opera, Tulsa Opera, Opera Carolina, Shreveport Opera, and Tri-Cities Opera in Binghamton. New works flowed from the pens of American composers and librettists, including The Telephone, The Mother of Us All, Amal and the Night Visitors, and many more. It was between 1947 and its ratification in 1951 that Congress worked on a very important amendment, Amendment 22, Section 1. No person shall be elected to the office of the president more than twice. It had been a long time since I read the Constitution, and I recommend it to you. You will see that some of it remains aspirational. I can't tell you how profoundly disappointing it is to stand in front of you at my last conference at a time when the arts, humanities, and sciences are under attack by our government. As Leanne said, only a small number of our companies receive NEA grants in any one year, and the amounts of the grants are modest in relation to the expense of the opera enterprise. But the manner in which grants have been terminated, the NEA staff fired, and the agency zeroed out in the president's slim budget demonstrates a complete diminishment and disrespect for the work we do and the ways we strengthen our communities, this country, and our national standing on the world stage. In a New York Times column in February of 2022, David Brooks wrote, and I quote, "Democracy is not natural. It's an artificial accomplishment that takes enormous work. It has to be tended and cultivated from the frailties of human passion and greed. Think of it like farming. Planting seeds is like establishing democracy. But for democracy to function, you have to till and fertilize the soil, erect fences, pull up weeds, prune the early growth. The founders knew that democracy is not natural. They understood that stretching back thousands of years, war, authoritarianism, exploitation, great powers crushing little ones, these were the natural state of human societies. It takes a lot of cultivation to make democracy work. But the seedbeds of democracy have been neglected. Not neglected by any of us in this room. We plant the seeds of democracy every time we offer an education program to expand the horizons of young people. Every time we bring opera to libraries, parks, and senior centers to lift the spirits of unexpecting citizens and seniors. Every time we bring hundreds and thousands of people to share emotional experiences in our theaters, we're bridging the divides that our elected officials are working hard to create. Every performance we offer can make a safe space on stage, backstage, and in the audience for women, people of color, and gay, lesbian, and trans people. In his column, David Brooks cited John Stuart Mill, who defined a liberal order as one in which people are free to conduct experiments in living. So we wind up with a large variety of types of characters, since there is no one best way to live. From the Constitution to David Brooks to John Stuart Mill, I turn to the late Pope Francis. He said, and again I quote, "The world needs artists. Art has the status of a city of refuge that disobeys the rule of violence and discrimination in order to create forms of human belonging capable of recognizing, including, protecting, and embracing everyone. It would be important if the various artistic practices could establish themselves everywhere as a sort of network of cities of refuge, cooperating to rid the world of the senseless and empty contracts that seek to gain ground in racism, xenophobia, inequality, ecological imbalance, and in the fear of the poor. He continued, behind these contrasts, there is always the refusal of the other. There is this selfishness that makes us function as solitary islands rather than collaborative archipelagos. He concluded, and it's on the screen, artists are part of the world, but are called to go beyond it. All I can say as a valedictory message is to appreciate deeply what you do and keep going.
It is great to be here because I know I'm amongst friends. I know I'm amongst people who know, care, live, and breathe, dream about the art, and who care so much about the transformative experience that we all call this crazy thing, opera. But it is especially nice for me to be able to be in a group of people who understand what it is to dedicate your life and to see and feel the transformative power when you walk into a theater and you see others experiencing that. I want to say thank you, Marc. Honestly, in the immediate days after February 12, there was a slight quiet, shall we say, in my life. And to have one of the very first phone calls be from you with this invitation was very meaningful. I spent a lot of time in that notable and noble performance venue on the Potomac. Some called it the Kleenex box on the river. We didn't like it that. But, you know, President Eisenhower described it and dreamt of it as being an artistic mecca. And he signed it into legislation in 1958, creating the National Cultural Center. It's only after the death of President Kennedy, who had also been very active and enthusiastic about this project, that it became a living memorial. And he, John F. Kennedy, was a fierce advocate and passionate believer in art and culture, and we have some of his. I think I might steal some of those from the Pope. I hadn't caught that, but I think I need to use the Pope for some of my future quotes. But he believed in the invaluable role of the artist in society, and that is at the core of the work that we did and the work that so many of my colleagues hold close to their heart. It was a great honor for me in nearly 5 decades, 47 and 19 days to be exact, of being an arts administrator, to lead that really truly incomparable institution. But it was because I was working side by side with so many dedicated and passionate colleagues. So many, and I know quite a number of you are alums or current who are still here in this room. And I know that you share my sense of pride for working in that place, in that city, for our country. Our collective work created countless memories, landmark artistic collaborations, as well as intimate, very personal exchanges. It was the best job imaginable, simply because it was our mission to facilitate transformative experiences for the millions of patrons who attend more than 2,000 performances produced and presented each year at the Kennedy Center. Time and again, I witnessed how lives were changed, how imaginations young and old were inspired, how new ideas and opportunities were created, and because of the chance to experience firsthand such extraordinary, diverse talent. It was a thrill and an immense honor to create and support the conditions where artists were able to thrive, be celebrated, and to inspire us with their creative spirits and incomparable talents. These recent weeks have been admittedly difficult, and not just for me personally, but for so many of my colleagues who have poured their hearts and their lives, their souls into this work and our common purpose every day. When I departed the Kennedy Center on February 12th, it was not really the way I thought I would be, and concluding my decade at the Kennedy Center, nor in a way feeling, okay, we're done, move on. It was shocking, I will tell you that. So all the more reason to be able to be here with friends is so important. Together, those people with me and alongside with them, we made great monumental things, and we were poised to do even bigger things in the coming months and over the course of the year ahead in anticipation of an important year in 2026. We were able to accomplish so much because we had a dedicated board and their support. You're scratching your head right now. We had appointees from the President of the United States, and in my time there, we had appointees from both sides of the party. We had Democratic, we had Republican, we had Democratic, we had Republican. That was the best bipartisan board that you could ever imagine. And I will say that for 4 of my 10 years, all of them were Trump appointees, standing right there, supporting what we were doing, enthusiastic, generously giving to our work. Because of their support and what we were able to achieve, I can confidently assert that when I left the Kennedy Center in February, just a few weeks, about 13 weeks ago, it was more programmatically vibrant, more fiscally sound, and better positioned for continued audience growth and social impact than at any time since its acclaimed opening in 1971. And to be clear, thank you. I'm not saying this, I had actually written it in my notes before today or yesterday or the day before. This is not stated as a defense. It is fact. It's filled with real live information, audits and all that, the numbers of people attended, all of that kind of stuff. I and my colleagues had immense pride in our work and a shared belief that we were making a difference, not just in our region, but across the country and around the world. The key to the Kennedy Center's institutional health and vitality had everything to do with our relentless commitment to ensuring that everyone, regardless of demographic, nationality, cultural tradition, taste, or political background, could see themselves and relate their experiences to a concert, a play, an opera, a dance performance, a book reading, you name it, we had it at the Kennedy Center. Everybody should be welcome, seen. Now, no single program will actually be something everybody likes, but it doesn't need to. Just as you go to a restaurant, not everybody likes everything on the menu, but you find the thing that is for you. The Kennedy Center, as the nation's designated, congressionally mandated cultural center, has to be the place where everyone is invited to belong and where, most importantly, artists are welcome and supported. The same, of course, is true in all of your venues, the opera houses, the playhouses, the concert halls, galleries, community centers, parks, all across our country, wherever artists are invited to share their creative talents. They must feel welcome, free, and empowered to share their unique perspectives, to enlighten and challenge us, to reveal perspectives and truths, to make us think critically about our time and our role in it. Yes, to enable us to experience new ideas, new insights, as well, of course, as joy. Always important. Now, opera, you know this so well. It's not a simple art form, but it's an emotional architecture, a tapestry woven with music, poetry, drama, and dance. I was a young baby administrator when Beverly Sills was the guru, And she, of course, was the one who embedded it first in me, saying, opera is the ultimate art form. It combines music, drama, dance, poetry, and dance, all of the arts, as I just said, in one place. What a special, unique time in a theater. It is this very special art form that both helps us interpret our own present day experience and at the same time transcend it. I can think of no other art form that has the capacity to engage and enlighten us, to lead us to think and feel more deeply with profound storytelling than opera. In Detroit, all the way up until last Sunday afternoon, the Central Park Five confronts us with that infamous episode of rash public judgment and injustice some 35 years ago that must and does continue to unsettle and instruct us. The Revolution of Steve Jobs, which has the wonderful score by my friend Mason Bates, recent production at the Washington National Opera, is similarly not so much about a person and how he changed society and our interactions. That's a good, important story in any case, but it's more important about the larger themes of personal triumph, failure, redemption, and the inherent human contradictions that are common to us all. I was deeply moved a number of years ago when I saw Anthony Davis's opera X, The Life and Times of Malcolm X, in Omaha. It revealed insights even larger than the person, the risks of speaking truth to power, the complexities of leadership and legacy, the undeniable influence of community and family, the perils and generational cost of systemic racism, oppression, and injustice. Now, those are three more recent experiences, but those stories are true for opera throughout the centuries. I'm using the current one because it's an easier parallel to see in our current day life. But every single opera, the recent one that you did here, where you rooted it in your city, tells the story of a community and of people. In a world that entices us to be more scrollers and spectators, opera demands that we become invested, think critically, and feel deeply. At the same time, opera dares us to become vulnerable, exposing ourselves in a setting with many, dozens, hundreds, thousands of others, to experience the depth of love, betrayal, sacrifice, redemption, emotions that transcend eras, cultures, borders, and bias of any time. And then, of course, opera celebrates that essential human trait and essential capacity, resilience, something that should serve us well in these times. So many of the great operatic tales and characters reveal humanity's intrinsic longing to overcome unreasonable barriers and odds that would really test the stamina of all of us. Think of Caliph or Siegfried or Tosca or any of these artists that we know and love. Admittedly, they don't always turn out so well. That's sort of what happens in opera. But I think that is why opera has endured for so long. It continues to fill our opera houses because we continue to come back to hear those stories. It is uncanny to hear these stories about our inner struggles and convey the often difficult interactions and conflicts which we endure in our time. In every sense, opera is consistently relevant and always revealing of human experience, forever enabling us to interpret our day and time against universal themes and our common existence. Sure, these are lofty notions, and anybody who's ever worked with me will tell you that that's how I always talk and dream. Let's imagine something that's even bigger than what we're doing right now. It is true, nonetheless, and I encourage us all always to think that way. This is the moment. Thank you for this. We're gathered here now because we share a certain perspective and that passion that Ned was talking about. We believe in the power of performance art. We believe in the ability that when we come together, that we share and experience things different. This remarkable form, opera, does that in many, many ways that is irreplicable. Singers, musicians, dancers, I hardly need to tell you all, but more importantly, the people behind the scenes, the designers, the directors, the stagehand, each contributing their brilliance to enable a transcendent experience. In this sense, opera is the ideal model for what we might accomplish if we could only take that from the stage and take it outside. So many of our individual talents and abilities in pursuit of a common vision and purpose can be so meaningful if we take that magic that happens when we produce an opera and take it to the larger community. The challenge of arts administrators, of institutions large and small, is to be as competent and proficient, and yes, as talented behind the scenes as those artistic talents are that we see on stage. It's a difficult proposition to make this work, to make it viable in the present day and sustainable long into the future. As we've just heard, we seem to be battling against so many different forces around us. We have to rely on that relentless determination to be successful. We seek to entice audiences with shifting tastes, technologies, shrinking attention spans, and an insatiable demand for instant gratification. Something that doesn't happen in opera most of the time since it's a long, long art form. We operate in a competitive environment. We operate where we believe that there is a shrinking pool of funders. I don't know that it is shrinking, but we have to pivot and re-examine and assume that there will be those who believe what we believe. Persistence and durability in the opera experience is what affirms us because we know that there is a deep hunger for beauty, depth, and connection. That's why we come together for an annual conference rather than just sitting on a Zoom. By being together, having the shared experience is transformative. To love opera and to invest in the future is to believe in this central premise that the arts change lives and infuse human existence with larger meaning and purpose. It heals, inspires, and unites us in ways that nothing else can. I've frequently been asked in the last few weeks, since I had that moment, what advice I would give to artists and to audiences and to those of us who work in this form. Particularly given this new focus on so-called acceptable art. It's really, really quite simple. Trust the artist, follow the artist, continue to support the artist, create the structures and environment so that they feel welcome, supported, empowered, and unencumbered to share their art and express their creative talent. Do not be swayed by political winds, and stay true to your mission to support the artist. And when asked about what patrons should do, I say follow the artist. Follow the artist. Support those artists that you believe in. Though perhaps of little consolation at this point, this most recent attempt at cultural confiscation is not without precedent. History abounds with examples of leaders who claimed to be the sole arbiter of true cultural expression and what was considered counter to nationalistic identity and partisan interests. Untold artists, writers, and intellectuals were denounced, persecuted, or exiled for what was regarded as degenerate art or bourgeois decadence. Artistic expression always reflects the realities of this time. The events, forces, and ideologies that define a given age for better or worse are reflected in the way our artists create their work. But when political ideology seeks to limit that same free expression, the harm is incalculable, and society's march towards its ideals are purposely slowed, but it cannot be impeded forever. Time, as we have seen, has a way of righting egregious wrongs, and fortunately for us, Artistic talent is typically granted in a similar proportion to personal courage. Ultimately, the assertion by any government that it alone maintains the prerogative to determine what is acceptable artistic expression and in the best interest of its people, culturally and otherwise, is an exercise in futility. The artist will always prevail. The artist will always create, always enlighten, always reshape our perspectives, how we see the world and our role within it, challenging our assumptions, attitudes, and cultural bias, and even at times create whole social movements. Quite simply, you've heard me say this before, the artist holds the mirror to who we are as a people, as a nation, telling the stories of who we are in our times, which then in turn compels us to be better and do better. This is both our hope and assurance that we are on the right side of history. As somebody said to me the other day, it'll be so interesting in a few decades to read the history book of what is happening at this time. And I said, no, pay attention to our artists right now. They are writing our history right now. They are telling the story of who we are. Pay attention to our artists. It's not a time to be timid, though. We can't shrink from our mission. No shrinking from your mission. Or bold inclusiveness. It is not a time to modulate, equivocate, or compromise your assertion that art in its broad accessibility make better communities, society, and cultures at large. It's now been just over 20 years since Yo-Yo Ma and I collaborated when we were in Chicago, developing a call to action that I like to think was prescient, especially in light of our current predicament. It was the concept of citizen artist and the inherent responsibilities that are involved when we accept that artists and arts organizations have obligations larger than themselves beyond the performance and enjoyment of their art. We are all well accustomed to the emphasis on community outreach and engagement, and those are great, wonderful events. And there's a wide spectrum of effectiveness, and trial and error is okay. That's the only way you can learn to have long-term success. But the fact is that sometimes it is perceived to be obligatory, something you do because you have public funding or philanthropy encourages you to do it. I would challenge us all to think of our role in and relationship to our communities and society as intrinsic to the art we are responsible for creating, performing, and sharing. Rather than merely a programmatic extension, considering constantly how the art we perform in our concert halls relates and truly serves the needs and issues of our communities is the definition of citizen artistry and the fulfillment of the citizen artist. For artists and those of us who have committed our lives to enabling their art to be shared in the broadest ways, to be credible in asserting that arts matter and deserve support, they and we must be invested in our communities. We can never allow ourselves to be considered elite, as niche, or in any way aloof from the realities around us. And I just want to say that having read about and heard about what's happening in Memphis, you are doing a fantastic job with that. Continue and expand. I think I'm going to go off script here for a minute. I truly believe that if the powers that are threatening to eliminate our institutions, to downsize our institutions, to shrink the NEA and the NEH, understood the power of art to transform lives, and how, if you talk to Mayor Young, he's going to tell you that the city is stronger because of art. We will and can thrive. But it does require that investment from us. And we should not go to our people with our hand out, but our arms open, and ask, what can we do to help improve our community? So to close, just a few quick comments. So when you live in Washington, D.C., people quote famous people all the time. It's gotten into my DNA, sorry. But in this case, I think it's pretty interesting because Leonard Bernstein had a pretty important role at the Kennedy Center, as many of you know as well. But he said, to achieve great things, you're going to love this, to achieve great things, two things are needed: a plan and not enough time. Coming from a composer, have you ever heard any of that before? So time is not on our side. But let's think about what can we do to be so involved in our community that we cannot be left off the table. We are at the table problem solving. We are helping a Mayor Young make Memphis even better than it is. John F. Kennedy, our namesake at the National Cultural Center, at his last address at Amherst College 1 month before his death, had a very important message. His words ring with renewed clarity and serve as a halting reminder to the society of the benefits when artistic expression is allowed to flourish unencumbered. He said, "If art is to nourish the roots of culture, society must set the artist free to follow his vision wherever it takes him. We must not forget that art is not a form of propaganda, it is a form of truth." So, to us in this room, let's embrace this challenge, assert the truth of the art we serve, and to insist on the support it requires in order so that the benefits to society that free expression always can deliver. Thank you for allowing me to be here and to share these thoughts that you can tell are very personal at this time of reflection, and go with great music and great artists. Thank you.